iRacing or Le Mans Ultimate? Which sim has the most realistic GT3 cars? Welcome back to the channel, and for those that are new, my name is Daniel Morad, factory driver for Mercedes-AMG, and because I've driven GT3 cars since 2017 with some reasonable success over the years, I thought this is a great opportunity to give you my opinion on what the most realistic sim is in terms of GT3 cars. Is it iRacing or is it Le Mans Ultimate? So to do this test, we'll break it down into 5 categories, being tires, braking, steering, throttle, and force feedback. And after I drive, I'll give you my opinion on what I think is the best on each sim and where each can be improved. Now, to run this test, I figured I'd use a track that's available both in iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate, and cars that are available both in iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate. So let's drive Sebring with BMW, McLaren, and Porsche. 3 different engine configurations and placements, and I'll try to gather all the information and give you my opinion and a general overview of what I think about each sim. Let's talk about tires. In my opinion, Le Mans Ultimate has the better tire, and this is going to come at no surprise. For those that are in the sim racing community, or you've spent a long enough time around the sim racing industry and community, you'll know that the iRacing tires are too sensitive or they overheat. You can't push them that hard. And that's one of the most important parts of any sim, because how the tires react to your driving style will dictate how realistic or unrealistic a game is. Now, in a real GT3 car, you can really push the car a lot, and you're sawing at the wheel and dancing on the tire. The tire moves around. You're really playing with a slip angle. iRacing, you basically have to drive with almost no slip angle at all. And with LMU, you drive with quite a lot of slip angle, which is similar to what you would experience in R Factor from what I've seen and what I've heard from other drivers that are specializing in R Factor. Now, Le Mans Ultimate, if you didn't know, is using a lot of the R Factor 2 physics. So they'll drive, from my understanding, pretty similar. So this will kind of translate or leak and spill over to the R Factor 2 physics and driving model. Now, I think that both are on opposite ends of the spectrum. If the middle line is here, iRacing is here in terms of underdriving, and LMU is over here in terms of overdriving to get the maximum performance. And it took me a lot of time when I started driving on Le Mans Ultimate to really feel where the actual limit is. I thought the limit was right here, but then I kept pushing and pushing, and my times improved, and I got into the top 30 times in the world at Sebring, actually, and that gave me an idea of really where the limit was in terms of professional driving and professional esports, and how far you can take the sim in terms of driving physics and driving technique. So, do I think that one is perfect or the other is not? No, I think they both kind of lie on opposite ends of the spectrum. As I said, it really comes down to driving style. I think that I prefer to underdrive, because I think it's easier for me to jump into a real car and push a little bit more to get the pace once I have the feeling of the car moving underneath me. And not one is right. Not one in particular is right. I think both have their strengths and weaknesses, and it's really coming down to personal preference and your driving technique and your style. Do you prefer to push and overdrive the car, or do you prefer to underdrive it to get performance and be a little bit more precise? I think for me, driving Le Mans Ultimate was a bit more of a change of pace, and it was actually kind of fun because I got to push really hard, and it felt nice to really, really hustle and push and squeeze the wheel and drive as hard as possible to get performance. Whereas on iRacing, it's a little bit more tame and it's more precise. So anyone that's a finesse driver or someone that's really precise with their steering inputs and the way they drive the car on the tire is going to like iRacing, and anyone that really likes to drive aggressively and push over the limit is going to tend to like Le Mans Ultimate more. Now, which one's more realistic? They're both kind of missing the mark a little bit in different ways. In terms of braking, I was actually pleasantly surprised with Le Mans Ultimate, although I think that iRacing still takes the crown in terms of braking, because of the fact that it's, like I mentioned with the tires, it definitely requires a more precise driving technique. I think it also extends over to the braking side of the characteristics of each sim. With iRacing, you have to be a lot more precise with the way you apply the brake, ramp the brake up, hold the peak pressure, choose your trail off point, and how quickly you trail off. I think all that's a lot more precise and finesse on iRacing. And if you guys have watched my video on breaking down braking, you'll know that I explain these 5 different points, and they're very similar in iRacing to the way you would drive the car in real life. And I do appreciate the braking technique in iRacing, although in LMU, it is definitely a step above any other sim, and it's pretty close. It's just a bit more aggressive, where you brake really hard and you can be a lot more aggressive with braking. So I would say it's definitely feeling close to the way a GT3 car feels in real life. But I think for the most part, not every car in iRacing, but most of the cars drive with correct braking inputs. The only cars that kind of feel a bit funny with the way you have to brake in some scenarios is, I would say, like the Audi. And yeah, it's just like with the Audi or the Corvette, you have to brake with a very weird, slow ramp up on the brake. And what I mean by that is slowly applying the pressure up to your peak and then squeezing the peak really late in the brake phase. And that's not really realistic. With GT3 cars, you're more or less ramping quite quickly up to the peak pressure. And with these 2 cars, for some reason, it's a very, very strange technique. So generally, I avoid driving those cars in iRacing, the Corvette and the Audi. In LMU, yeah, for the cars I've driven, for the most part, they feel pretty consistent. The way you brake and the way you attack the brake pedal, I think it's just a bit too aggressive. It's on the aggressive side for sure, and requires a little bit less finesse because of the way you drive the car in LMU. You're way more aggressive with the way you rotate the car. So you're attacking the brakes and you're bringing the brake further into the corner. So it's a lot more of an aggressive trail brake into the apex to get the rotation. And yeah, that's just the way you drive the car. So in terms of braking, I'm going to say that iRacing is slightly more realistic for the most part, except for a few cars, than LMU, but both are very, very good. And I was pleasantly surprised with the way you brake in LMU, and just happy it wasn't like the way you brake in ACC. For steering, I'm going to consider this the way the car goes through the corner. So the way the car rotates through the corner, the way you turn the wheel. And iRacing, like I mentioned with the tires, you have to drive the car very precise. So when you turn in, you're turning with really smooth inputs. You're not really moving the wheel and feeling the car rotate. So yeah, iRacing is, I think, over here, and LMU is over here. So it's the same kind of thing as the tire. And I think tires and steering go hand in hand in a way. Yeah, it's just, I think iRacing, you have to be really precise and steer one time. If you turn multiple times and have a bit too much yaw or slip angle, then you get punished for it because the tires overheat. In LMU, you drive actually a little bit too aggressive, and the way you rotate the car, it just, you know, I know they've made adjustments and they've patched it quite a lot, but you still are driving it on the rear tire a lot. And you're not driving GT3 cars on the rear tire so much. You actually drive it off of the front tire feeling. So you're always kind of driving into like a front limitation situation. That's how you know you're on the limit, is you're driving it so hard in the corner and you just get the understeer. Whereas in LMU, you need to drive the car by throwing it in the corner and really working the wheel and straightening your hands off and having a lot of slip through the middle of the corner. So yeah, you could definitely saw the wheel and slip it a lot more in LMU. So again, it comes down to driving technique and driving style. Which do you prefer? And because I use the sim as a training tool for real life, I have to be really careful with which I prefer. And like I mentioned with the tires, I prefer to drive a car that is more finesse on the sim, because I know that when I go into the real car, I can be a lot more aggressive. Rather than trying to dial myself down, I can ramp my aggression up. And it's way easier to go up in anything you do, whether it's the way you drive or the horsepower or the speed of the car. It's always better to go into a faster car than it is to go from a really fast car down to a slower car. It's very difficult to make that transition and to dial yourself down. So I always find it's easier for myself to ramp up the intensity than, like I said, to dial it down. So I think I prefer the iRacing style of steering, because it requires a lot of precision and finesse. But as I mentioned before with tires, it is kind of fun to throw the car around. So it really depends on your flavor, what you prefer to do and what you're looking to get out of a sim, but both are a little bit off the mark. So as I mentioned, I prefer iRacing for training, but in terms of fun, I enjoy the way the LMU steering is and the way you drive it through the middle of the corner with a lot of aggression. In terms of the way you ramp up the throttle, it's a clear winner for Le Mans Ultimate. I just think that there's so much more feeling with the way you drive the car off the corner with the throttle. In GT3 cars, you actually have really good traction off the corner, so it's kind of by a landslide. iRacing is very, very sensitive with the way you go on throttle. Aside from the Porsche, most of the cars struggle with traction and feels, and it just like, okay, this is going to tie into the tires, but it feels like you're driving on big balloons with overinflated tires and you have no contact patch. You don't really feel the car sitting down and squatting into the road, whereas in LMU you do. And generally, the mistake that you would feel in real life if you go to throttle too early is you'd get weight transfer onto the rear tire and you get push off the corner into a very late counter steer or oversteer. So we call that a snap oversteer off the corner. And that's what you get in LMUs. If you go on power too early, you get this understeer off the corner and then you get a really late correction or slide off the corner. And that's, in my opinion, much more realistic. So without any question, Le Mans Ultimate definitely takes the crown with the throttle application technique and the feeling in terms of realism. So yeah, not even close. Finally, let's talk about force feedback. I don't know why this is such a talked about point. Right after tires, it's like tires, force feedback, the two most important things for sim racers. Now, what's more realistic, iRacing or Le Mans Ultimate? It's probably going to be a surprise to you, but I believe that iRacing's force feedback is more realistic. And the reason for that is it just feels more natural in terms of how much information you have. Now, everyone's going to say, well, more information is better. Yes, to a certain extent. But in my opinion, Le Mans Ultimate just had so much to the point where it was just shaking on everything. It was vibrating for everything. The intensity on the curbs was like every curb was vibrating the same at 100% intensity. I couldn't dial down my settings enough, even though people, you know, in my live stream on Twitch would say, oh, change this setting, change that setting. No matter what settings I changed, I could not adjust the settings enough to make it feel more natural and realistic. And the only people that can really comment on how realistic the force feedback is, in terms of how it is against a real car, is somebody who's driven a real GT3 car. And this is no knock at sim racers, because I'm in this with you guys. I want the best. I want to have the coolest, best experience. And at the end of the day, the more natural experience is iRacing. It's out of the box, feeling pretty natural. You don't have to do much to it. Whereas LMU, I had to change everything and it still is oversaturated, too much detail, too much information, could not turn it down enough. And for that reason, I think that iRacing has a better force feedback and probably the best force feedback in all of sim racing. So now you're wondering, which sim is the most realistic? Now that we've gone through tires, braking, steering, throttle, and force feedback. I wish it was that easy just to say that one was better than the other, but they really are so different in the way they drive. And to round it out, I think that, as I mentioned for so many of the topics, if perfect is right here, they both sit on either side of perfect with some small things that can be changed. Now, I think that the tires are a little bit better in LMU, braking a little bit better on iRacing, steering, it's a toss-up between the two. They're on both extremes. Throttle, clear-cut winner for Le Mans Ultimate, and force feedback, iRacing. Now, if you take the two and you put them together and you make a baby, it's going to be the best version of what we have available right now. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So it really comes down to, like I mentioned a lot through this video, is your personal preference. What do you enjoy driving more? And that's really what it comes down to. Sim racing is about having fun and just enjoying yourself. If you want a realistic experience, you can get a little bit out of both. And in my opinion, right now, iRacing is leading the way just in terms of the overall package because of the content they have available, the multiplayer platform, the special events. There's so much more going for iRacing currently, but LMU is working hard. And I know a few of the developers now since playing the game and getting really stuck into it and trying to understand the game, getting enough hours where I can give you my honest opinion and a correct opinion on the game, that I know they're working hard. And it's really nice actually to have competition in the industry. And I think that it's going to keep pushing the bar further and further up. And really, at the end of the day, it's a win for all of us. Hopefully you found good value in the video. Sorry I couldn't give you a definitive answer in terms of what the best sim is, but a little bit of both is healthy. Let me know down below in the comments what team you're on. Are you iRacing? Are you LMU? Are you both? Do you care? Let me know what you guys enjoy playing. It's actually cool to understand and listen to the community, because I'm curious actually what you guys enjoy to play. Now, since you've made it to this point in the video, if you haven't already done so, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed my content. Otherwise, I guess the algorithm will find you again in the next video. See you guys.